Welcome back to another episode of How to Build. Today we're going to talk about building metric groups from any data source. Now, I'm Sean. I'm one of the co-founders here at Malartu. And today I'm going to be working with Xero data connected with the automatic data connection to Malartu. So some of the benefits of working with these groups and this grouping feature in general is that it allows you to combine data from one or more data sources in ways that are really specific to what you're advising. So this means that if you maybe want to reorganize some of your expenses on a dashboard or analyze them in a certain way, but you don't necessarily want to change a chart of accounts, groupings is perfect for that. And another data source, maybe in T-sheets, you can combine codes from different employees and put them together. And this is obviously something you wouldn't do deliberately in T-sheets or maybe can't do. And beyond that, the opportunity is really endless. You can combine different data sources. So if you had web traffic, maybe you're monitoring from both Shopify and Google Analytics, you can use groupings to combine metrics from both of those connections and so on. Really an infinite number of things you can do. So what we're going to use today is a Xero data connection. We're going to use the groupings feature, obviously. And then we're going to use tables on a dashboard. And then we're going to use the metric picker to add our newly formed groupings into those tables. And then through this, you'll be able to see hopefully how you can build out these big dashboards with customized groups. You can visualize them in different ways. You can customize what you drill down into, etc. There's a lot you can do with this. So we'll just do a little high level example and then you'll be off to the races. So I'm over here in a demo account and you'll see we've got a lot going on. So we'll try to stay specific to just one data source. But again, you could do this with any data source. You can combine different ones, a whole bunch you can do with groupings. But today we're going to use Xero. And first thing first is you always want to make sure you have a healthy data connection. You can see I've got some data pulling in here. I pulled some days, but today we're going to work with monthly data primarily. So I do have a good number of months pulled in here and complete, plenty to work with. So eventually we're going to build a board, but first we're going to build the groupings. So I'm going to go metrics, groupings, and like many of you, I probably don't have any created. So I'm going to create a new group. And this one, we're just going to work with Xero data. So I'll call this Xero groupings. All right, and here you go. So within our kind of group section here, we can add an infinite number of groups, subgroups. You can nest these. There's a bunch. You can add metrics, from different data sources. I won't keep saying that, I promise. So first thing, I'm going to today just look at something simple like non-budgeted expenses. I'm going to have another group with budgeted expenses. And we won't do this to the T, but you hopefully get the idea here. So when I have my two first groups built to add data to them, I just check the box next to one group. You'll notice if you check both boxes, the metric picker goes away. That's because we don't allow you to add metrics to two groups at once. But you can check both of these, as you'll see in a second, because you can move around multiple groups at once, which will be helpful once you have a long list of these. But anyway, back to the first group. You can either add data from data sources or user-defined metrics, which, as we know, almost always comes from the document reader. But today I'm going to go with Xero data. So since these are non-budgeted expenses, I'm going to navigate to my operating expense part here. And let's just pick out a few that wouldn't be budgeted. Maybe consulting. All right, so I've just selected kind of a few at random. And now I'm going to add a few budgeted expenses. So I unchecked non-budgeted group. Checked the budgeted one. Now we know that's where we're adding. And let's add in some here. All right, so these are those that I could budget. Now, before we go and work with this data, one thing I do want to point out is while you're organizing, it's often helpful to have subgroups. To build a subgroup in either one of these, you just add a new group, give it a name, select that, and now instead of adding data to this, I'm going to actually use this feature, move to group, then you'll see I can add to any parent group that's currently on the board. So if I wanted to add this subgroup with a non-budgeted, there we go. Now I can add data to the subgroup freely, and you'll see it show up here. So You'll see in a second why you would want to do this. There's some obvious use cases you might have, but also this will mean that you can drill down from non-budgeted and then to subgroup and then to any other subgroup that you have under here. And you can just keep building deeper and deeper levels of drill down. So just so we keep this simple, I'm going to take out this subgroup and we're just going to work with these two. So now that we've got some in here, let's build a new board and work with our new groupings. So first thing, I'm just going to clean this up with a new name. And then, like I said in the intro, we're going to use tables today. So I'm going to just start with one table. And let's just riff on this. So editing this block, this table, we'll call this group example. And you'll see in the metric picker where you usually would have maybe gone to data sources, and you still could do that. You're now going to go to groupings because this is where we just built. And anything that you've built in groupings, you'll now find here. So here's our Xero groupings. And you see here's our non-budgeted and budgeted expenses. And this interface should look familiar if you worked with anything from a data integration. This is going to be exactly the same. So where usually you'd have add as section, you now have add as group. So I can add this whole group here now, or I can even drill into the group and add individual metrics that I'd added from it before. So I'm going to add both of these as sections, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, good. So we've got some data in here. And now just like anything else in Malartu, this is all going to be free form. So I can visualize this as a bar. Yeah, I can change the view period instead of year to date, year to last month. Maybe I want to look at this quarterly. I have all the same flexibility I would have using any data source, but now these are with my specific groupings. The last thing I want to show you is the concept of drill down. So obviously when we're viewing as a bar, we just have this bar visualization, but if I copy this block, just to show you, I'm going to now, instead of viewing this block as a bar, I'm going to view it as a table. And if you're familiar with tables in a table view, you'll see we now have drop-down capabilities. So these are all of the metrics that I added within the grouping, and I can drop down. And then if I had a subgroup, I could click it again and continue to drop down and drill down into as many views as I want. So you have tons of flexibility in how you organize the data using groupings. And again, you can use any data source. You could even you group any user-defined metric with maybe data from Xero, or you could group data from Xero and T-sheets. You have really endless possibilities.